Growing up in the quiet town of Ardmore, Pennsylvania, my friends and I often sought thrills in unconventional ways. One of our favorite pastimes was exploring abandoned buildings, a hobby I later learned was quite popular among urban explorers. Our go-to spot was an old church in Narberth, located at 198 Elmwood Avenue. On a crisp fall evening, 6 of us decided to pay it a visit. Me, Luna, Gina, Johnny, Max, Ally. To access the church, we had to scale an 8-feet chain-link fence and squeeze through a side window as all the doors were boarded up. Inside, the first floor was nothing but dirt, the floorboards long since removed. A set of concrete stairs in the center led down to the basement, which became our usual hangout spot. The basement contained 3 rooms, but only one had an actual door. We gathered in the largest room, furnished with broken chairs and a busted couch. Johnny, a notorious lightweight, kept disrupting our typically hushed atmosphere with his drunken antics. Suddenly, a thunderous door slam shattered the night. We froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Luna, Gina, and Johnny immediately bolted up the stairs, leaving me with Max and Ally, the bravest or perhaps most foolish of our group. After a tense silence, curiosity got the better of us. We crept towards the room where the noise originated. Inside, an old dresser caught my eye. Its cracked mirror bore red smears that looked disturbingly fresh. On the dresser sat a black and white photo of a bride. Though she was smiling, something about her expression felt off. An eerie feeling crept over me, and I started to regret our decision to investigate. Just then, another sound emanated from the room we'd come from. That was the last straw. We grabbed our things and fled. As we scrambled over the fence, I glanced back and swore I saw a silhouette in the window we'd entered through. Years later, I returned to find the church demolished. The mystery of what we experienced that night remains unsolved. While I'm grateful my friends were there to corroborate the events, part of me wonders what secrets that old building might have held. As a caterer, I spend most nights on the road driving a massive company truck and lugging equipment from place to place. While it's not the worst job, the hours are grueling and far from what I envisioned for my career. By the time I get home, I'm either wired from caffeine or collapsing into a 12-hour coma. One night, around 2 a.m., I was driving my personal car home after a long shift. Realizing I was too caffeinated to sleep and ravenous, I decided to hit the 24-hour McDonald's near my house. It's my go-to for satisfying those occasional late-night cravings. As I waited in the drive-thru line, something caught my eye. An old, beat-up Volkswagen with tinted windows parked in a far corner of the lot. It seemed odd since the dining room was closed. I brushed it off, got my food, and left, not wanting to go straight home. I drove to a nearby nature preserve with a scenic overlook. It was a favorite hangout spot in high school, perfect for some nostalgic solitude. But as I pulled into the gravel lot, I was stunned to see those same headlights from the McDonald's parking lot. Unnerved, I called a friend to join me. While waiting, I watched 4 men exit the Volkswagen, silently surveying their surroundings. Our peaceful reminiscing was soon interrupted by 3 of the men from the parking lot. When my friend arrived, we hiked up to the overlook. They approached us, offering to share their blunt. When I asked about McDonald's, their demeanor instantly changed. That's when we noticed the 4th man lurking in the shadows nearby. Panic set in, and we sprinted back to our cars, the group in hot pursuit. We managed to escape, but the encounter left us shaken. The next day, we reported the incident to McDonald's. To our horror, we learned the ringleader was an unstable ex-employee with a restraining order against him. While his motives for following me remain unclear, the experience was truly terrifying. I haven't returned to that McDonald's or the preserve since, hoping the police catch this dangerous individual before he harms someone. For over 4 decades, I've plied my trade as a welder. Now, in my twilight years, I find solace in late-night walks around my sprawling farm. It's just me and my loyal companion Bosley rattling around in a house far too big for two since my beloved Maria succumbed to cancer. My children have long since flown the nest, leaving behind echoes of happier times. One crisp evening, after a grueling day in the workshop, Bosley and I set out on our usual circuit. As we neared home, something caught my eye. A flicker of movement in the upstairs window of the master bedroom, a room I'd avoided for years. My blood ran cold, then hot with anger at the thought of an intruder. Rushing inside, I found the room exactly as I'd left it, undisturbed and empty. Though I tried to rationalize it, an uneasy feeling lingered. The following night, Bosley's low growl roused me from sleep. Straining my ears, I heard the unmistakable creak of footsteps directly overhead. Again, I investigated, finding nothing amiss. My anger was slowly giving way to annoying anxiety. Things escalated when I discovered the kitchen lights on, despite being certain I'd turned them off. At my wit's end, I called the police. They searched thoroughly, but found no evidence of an intruder, their skepticism thinly veiled. The situation reached a terrifying crescendo when I opened the bedroom door to find Maria's clothes, long since packed away, strewn across the floor. And there, in the doorway, stood a woman. Though her face was obscured, I knew instantly it wasn't Maria. Panic overtook me, and I charged. She fled, vanishing into the night before I could catch her. For months afterward, sleep eluded me. Every creak and groan of the old farmhouse set my nerves on edge. I took to keeping my rifle close at hand, a constant reminder of my vulnerability. One night, as I sat vigil in the living room, I spotted her again, a silhouette in the moonlit yard staring directly at me. I fired warning shots, sending her fleeing into the darkness. But the damage was done. My sanctuary had become a prison of perpetual anxiety. I'm at a loss. This torment seems never-ending, and I'm not sure how much longer I can endure. If not for Bosley's unwavering presence, I fear I might have already lost my grip on sanity. I'll update if anything changes, but for now, I remain on high alert, dreading what each night might bring. I recently embarked on a solo off-roading expedition in my trusty Jeep, venturing into the wilderness of Colorado's Red Feather Lakes. As night fell, I found myself traversing the challenging Dead Man's Road trail. Surrounded by breathtaking scenery, exhausted but exhilarated, I decided to make camp for the night. I pulled off the main trail, transforming my Jeep into a makeshift campsite by folding down the back seats. Some might call me eccentric for enjoying solitary off-road camping, but I've always relished solo adventures. After a simple dinner of protein bars and snacks, I settled into my sleeping bag in the back of the Jeep. The LED light bar illuminated the surrounding forest, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Despite the rugged accommodations, I felt a sense of peace wash over me as I prepared for a night under the stars. However, my tranquility was short-lived. In the depths of night, an unsettling sound pierced the darkness, a disembodied voice followed by chilling laughter. My heart raced as I peered out the windows, searching for signs of another vehicle or camper. Nothing. The voice grew clearer, seemingly belonging to a woman or young boy. "Hello, I see you there," it called out, sending shivers down my spine. Paralyzed with fear, I clung to the irrational hope that if I remained still, whoever or whatever was out there wouldn't notice me. Suddenly, a loud bang on my rear windshield shattered the silence. Adrenaline surging, I scrambled into the driver's seat and sped away as fast as the rocky terrain would allow. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw only the red glow of my taillights piercing the inky blackness. I drove for hours until I reached the safety of a motel, my mind reeling from the terrifying encounter. Some have suggested it could have been a stranded hiker, but deep down I know that no innocent traveler would behave so menacingly in the dead of night. This harrowing experience serves as a stark reminder. Always remain vigilant, even in seemingly peaceful surroundings. The wilderness can harbor unexpected dangers, and it pays to stay alert and trust your instincts.
Always loved hiking. Growing up near the Blue Ridge Mountains, I'd spend weekends exploring trails, losing myself in the solitude of the woods. There's something about the quiet crunch of leaves underfoot, the smell of pine, and the occasional rustle of a deer that makes me feel alive. But last fall, I had an experience that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. It was early October, and the air had just started to cool down, perfect for a long solo hike. I decided to try a new trail I'd heard about, a lesser-known path cutting through a dense part of the forest that was supposed to lead to a beautiful overlook. I packed a small bag, filled my water bottle, and set out just after dawn. The trail was overgrown, a thin, winding path that cut through a thick carpet of fallen leaves. The first few miles were uneventful. The trees were tall and dense, and the further I went, the quieter it became. I hadn't seen another hiker since I started, but I was used to that. I liked it, actually. Just me and nature. But around midday, something started to feel off. I can't quite explain it, but the air felt different, heavier somehow. I noticed that the birds had stopped chirping. I remember thinking how odd it was because even in the deepest parts of the woods, you'd always hear something, a woodpecker, a distant crow. But there was nothing. Just silence. Then, I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping sound. At first, I thought it might be a woodpecker, but the sound was too steady, too deliberate. It came from ahead, somewhere along the trail. I stopped and listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was slow, almost like someone was knocking on wood with a stick. I told myself it was nothing, maybe just an echo, a trick of the wind. But as I continued, the tapping grew louder. The path began to narrow, the trees crowding closer together, their branches forming a tangled canopy overhead. I started to feel a tightness in my chest, my breath coming in shallow bursts. The tapping seemed to follow me, always just a little ahead, just out of sight. I picked up my pace, trying to shake off the uneasiness that had settled over me like a blanket. But as I did, the sound quickened too. Tap, 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 tap. I stopped again, turning in a slow circle, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. Then, something caught my eye, a small object hanging from a low branch, swaying gently in the breeze. It was a bundle of twigs, bound together with some kind of old, frayed string. It looked almost like a small, primitive doll. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'd heard of things like this before, old folk traditions, talismans, or warnings. I wasn't sure which, but the sight of it made my skin crawl. I reached out to touch it, but as soon as my fingers brushed against it, the tapping stopped. Complete silence fell over the forest, a silence so thick it felt like a physical presence pressing down on me. I dropped my hand and took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. For a few moments, I stood there, staring at that little bundle, my mind racing. I felt exposed, like I was being watched. I shook my head, trying to dispel the irrational fear that was creeping up my spine. I needed to keep moving, needed to get to the overlook and then head back before it got dark. I continued down the trail, my senses on high alert. The air felt thick, suffocating. And then, I saw it, another bundle, hanging from a branch just ahead. This one was different, though. Larger, more elaborate. I felt a sudden urge to turn back, to abandon the hike and head home. But stubbornness got the better of me. I was just spooking myself, letting my imagination run wild. I pushed on. As I moved past the bundle, I heard it again. The tapping. Louder this time. Closer. I quickened my pace, practically jogging now, my eyes darting around the forest. The sound kept pace with me, always just ahead, like it was leading me somewhere. I don't know when I started running, but I did, my feet pounding against the dirt, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The tapping grew frantic, almost frantic, an erratic rhythm that made my heart race. I felt a panic building in my chest, my mind screaming at me to turn back, to run. The tapping didn't return, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. And then, I saw it. Standing in the middle of the trail, maybe 50 feet ahead, was a man. At least, I thought it was a man. He was tall, dressed in a tattered coat, his face obscured by the shadows. He was holding something long in his hand, a stick. I realized the source of the tapping. He wasn't moving, just standing there, waiting. My heart stopped. I froze, unsure of what to do. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, he lifted the stick and began to tap it against a tree, a slow, deliberate rhythm that sent a jolt of fear through my body. I took a step back, and he stopped. Silence. I took another step, and he took a step forward. I turned and ran. I ran like I've never run before, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air. The tapping followed me, relentless, growing louder and louder until it was all I could hear. I didn't dare look back. I just ran, my feet pounding against the ground, branches whipping against my face. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually, the tapping faded, the sound swallowed by the forest. I kept running until I burst out onto the main road, my chest heaving, my body trembling. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. When I finally looked back, there was nothing. Just the trail disappearing into the woods, the trees standing silent and still. I never found out who or what was in those woods with me. I haven't been back to that trail since. And now, whenever I go hiking, I can't help but listen for that sound, that slow, rhythmic tapping, somewhere in the distance. And every time I hear a branch snap or a leaf rustle, I wonder if it's just the wind, or if something is still out there, waiting.
This happened in early 2023, when I was staying with my older brother in a small town just outside of Boise, Idaho. I had lost my job in Portland and needed a place to crash while I figured things out. He offered me the guest room at his house, a quiet two-bedroom rental at the end of a dead-end street surrounded by trees and farmland. The town itself had one gas station, a diner, and more cows than people. It was the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, or at least pretends to. I didn't mind it. I wasn't looking for excitement. I just wanted a break from the noise of the city. The house backed up against a long stretch of woods with no neighbors on that side. There was a wire fence separating the yard from the forest, but it was rusted and half collapsed in places. My brother, Evan, had lived there for 2 years and never had any issues. He kept to himself, worked at a local mechanic shop, and didn't ask many questions about why I left. The first week was normal. I helped out around the house, applied for jobs online, cooked dinner. But by the end of the second week, things started to feel off. It began with the knocking, not on the door, on the window. The first time it happened was a Wednesday night. I had just gone to bed, around midnight. The guest room had one small window that looked out over the backyard and into the trees. I was scrolling on my phone with the lights off when I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, just sharp and deliberate. I froze, thinking maybe it was a tree branch or a raccoon. I waited, holding my breath. Then it happened again. 3 more knocks. Closer this time. I got out of bed and looked through the curtain. Nothing. Just blackness and the faint outline of the woods. I went to the living room and told Evan. He shrugged it off, said it was probably the wind or a deer. I didn't sleep much that night. The next night, it happened again. But this time, it was on a different window, his bedroom window. He heard it too. I was in the hallway when I saw him come out of his room, pale, with his phone in one hand and a wrench in the other. We both went outside with flashlights and walked around the house. Nothing. No footprints, no damage. Just silence and cold air. We called the local sheriff's office the next morning. The deputy they sent out was a younger guy, friendly but clearly not too concerned. He said it was probably wildlife, maybe kids messing around. He offered to do a patrol, but said unless we had footage or an actual break-in, there wasn't much he could do. We thanked him, and he left. That was the first time we heard. There's nothing we can do. By the weekend, it got worse. We started hearing movement in the woods at night. Not the random rustling of an animal, but steady, slow footsteps, sometimes pacing, sometimes stopping right at the tree line. We tried shining flashlights out there, but we never saw anyone. Evan bought a floodlight and set it up on the back deck, but it didn't help. Whatever it was, knew how to avoid it. One night, around 2:30 a.m., we heard tapping. Not knocking tapping, rapid and rhythmic, like someone drumming their fingers on glass. I grabbed a kitchen knife and crept into the guest room. The tapping stopped the moment I pulled back the curtain, and there, on the glass, were fingerprints. 5 distinct, smudged prints, long and narrow, like someone had been standing there, waiting. I called the sheriff's office again. This time, 2 deputies showed up. They looked at the window, took a few notes, and told us it wasn't enough to investigate. I asked if they could dust for prints or set up surveillance. They said they didn't have the resources for that. They told us to stay alert and call again if anything escalated. It did. The next night, I woke up to the sound of breathing. It was so faint I thought I was dreaming, but it was real. Slow, raspy, deliberate breathing right outside my window. I was paralyzed. I didn't even reach for my phone. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying not to move. The breathing lasted maybe a minute, then stopped. The next morning, I found a dead bird on the back porch. Its neck was snapped, and its wings were splayed out like someone had arranged it. We set up a camera that day, just one of those motion detection doorbell cams, mounted to a broom handle and stuck into the ground near the backyard. We aimed it toward the woods. That night, we stayed up watching the live feed. At 2:17 a.m., it caught something. A man stepped out from behind a tree. He was tall, thin, wearing a dark coat and what looked like a balaclava or ski mask. He walked slowly toward the house, stopped about 15 feet from the window, and just stood there for almost 5 full minutes. Then he raised one hand and waved at the camera. We called 911 immediately. The deputies came back, watched the footage, and finally admitted it was disturbing. But they still didn't take a report. They said it wasn't a crime to stand in the woods. He hadn't trespassed technically. They said they'd increase patrol presence. That was the second time we heard. There's nothing we can do. We both started sleeping in shifts. One of us would stay up, the other would try to rest. We kept the lights on. Evan bought a shotgun and kept it loaded by the front door. I started looking for apartments back in Portland. I didn't care if I had to sleep on a friend's couch, I just wanted out. But I didn't get the chance, because on the 3rd week, I went outside to get the mail and found a note tucked inside the box. It wasn't sealed, just folded notebook paper, damp from the morning dew. On the inside, it said, "The woods are patient, the cops aren't." No signature, just that. I packed my things and left that day. Evan stayed behind. He didn't want to be driven out of his own house. He put up more cameras and motion lights. For a while, things were quiet. Then, about a month later, he called me. He sounded shaken. Said he found a small wooden cross staked into the ground just beyond the fence line. Burned into the wood, crudely, were 3 words: "I never left." That was the last time I visited that town. I told Evan I'd help him move if it came to that. But part of me wonders if whatever or whoever that was isn't just tied to the house, but to the silence, the kind the police can't hear, and the kind they can't stop.